Hey everybody, how y'all doing this morning? I'll tell you, it's a little chilly out here and I'm having a little bit of a left-handed day. I've tried to start this thing 3 times now, and every time I've sat down it stopped. So hopefully this time it won't. But today we're going to be doing Titus. I know, Sandy and I just talked about that, right? We're going to do Titus chapter 3 verses 1 through 3. And so an easy way to find Titus, if you're not there yet, you can go back to the the New Testament right there, and you know that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, those are the Gospels, right? And then Acts is the history. So we're going to look right in the middle of all that, and at the end, from Romans to Jude. So if you flip right in the middle of Romans to Jude, you'll see there used to be an old song, something Romans to Jude, the letters that Paul wrote, and then if you get to Revelations, obviously you're too far. Like I said, Romans to Jude right there, and right in the middle is a little tiny Titus. So if you Timothy, 2 Timothy, and then Titus, and I think the one right after that is Philemon. So little tiny Titus. It's only 3 chapters, but very important. It packs a lot in there. So the first chapter in Titus is about how the church should be organized, and then the second chapter is about who should preach and how. And then the third one is how the church citizens, like the people of the church, should act. And so there's a lot that goes into that, but it's kind of important because, you know, some people will say, well, and I heard somebody yesterday say it too, and there was a comment online on one of the pastors that I watched that something about your works can't get you into heaven. And nobody's talking about your works getting into heaven. That's what Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the gospel, about your sinner's prayer and all that. Those are the works. You showing gratitude and honoring the Lord in servitude is different, and we've covered that biblically as well as why it's important to serve the Lord, correct? So in that, we know, now we want to know how we should act as Christians in the church. And who is Titus anyways? So that's, remember, we always want to ask, who is this guy? So we know Paul wrote a letter to this guy because it's called Titus, and it's in those little areas. So Titus is Paul's friend. So when Paul was on the island of Crete, Titus was like his right-hand man. And when Paul left the island of Crete, then Titus took over the church there. And it's gotten kind of out of hand. It's interesting. So these letters, if you really read them, the letters that he's writing to Corinth, if you read them, I mean, these churches have gone a little bit, you know, willy-nilly. They started kind of doing their own thing. So that's what Titus 2 is about too. Is like, hey, who should be preaching and that kind of thing. And when I was joking and said the other day there's a special place in hell that do the false gospel, it's a little bit of a joke, but not so much. So anyways, chapter 3 verse 1. Put them in mind to be subject to principalities and powers, to obey magistrates, to be ready to every good work, to speak evil of no man, to be no brawler, but gentle, shewing all meekness unto all men. For we ourselves also were sometimes foolish, disobedient, deceived, serving divers like lust, pleasures, living in malice and envy, hateful, and hating one another. Wow, pretty heavy. So Paul's saying, hey, look, don't forget, we used to be like that. So tell them, you know, remind them how to be. Tell them to be like that. Tell them to be good. But I'm going to read it in the New American Standard Version. Borrow my wife's Bible real quick. I have one in there. Don't know where it's at. Don't use it all the time. But she had hers sitting there, so I borrowed it. That way you can hear it, not in the old English that like hits me, but you can hear it in this, just plain English. Remind them to be, excuse me, little Arnold Palmer here. Till it's sweet tea time. Okay. Remind them to submit to rulers and authorities, to obey, to be ready for every good work, to slander no one, to avoid fighting, and to be kind, always showing gentleness to all people, For we too were once foolish, disobedient, deceived, enslaved by various passions and pleasures, living in malice and envy, hateful, detesting one another. So don't forget who you used to be, all right? So, but remember, remind them to submit to rulers and authorities, and to be kind, right? So that's how you're supposed to act. That's how you as a Christian, if you're going to identify yourself as a Christian, that's how you should present yourself. It shouldn't be the Christian's the guy who drives the Prius and cuts everybody off on the freeway and goes 42 in a 70 zone. Just because he has a fish on his car. Jesus Take the Wheel is just a country song, okay? It really is. It's nothing more than that. I understand the metaphoric meaning of it, but it doesn't mean that, although symbolically you want him to take the wheel, that you actually just release the wheel. So stop doing that. And that middle lane is for traveling, all right? So there's a passing, there's a traveling, you got the little slow lane, it's entries and exits, right? Just a little reminder. So I stay on my course too, in case I encounter you while I'm driving, right? Anyways, I don't know where I was going with that. Anyways, so that's little Titus. We only did chapter 3. And I know people say works can't get you into heaven. So let me clarify something real quick too, just so I'm sure that I've said it, that this tells you how to act. It's not telling you by your works you're going to get into heaven. It's just telling you, hey, look, come on, this is how you should be acting right here. So, and that's what God wants. So when you stand in front of the man, I mean, it's all you. It's all you. You do as much or as little as you want to do. That's called free will. So I'm doing whatever God calls me to do. You do you. I think that I'm doing the right thing in that. So if you think the right thing is whatever you think, the reason I think that is because I'm reading the Bible. So I'm just doing as much as I can to serve the Lord until he comes back. So remember, love God with all your heart and love Jesus. I mean, oh, I told you I was having I told you I was having a left-handed day when we started this. So, okay, let's try that again. Love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. You can love Jesus too. It's okay.